Hi guys, this is Lalana. Thank you for tuning into the Sovereign Path. So today we're going to talk about attachment and non-attachment, which I'll probably do another video on this just because it's a pretty broad topic. But in this video, we're going to talk about why attachment is keeping you stuck on the Twin Flame Path. And we're going to sort of dive into these beliefs and these programs that are continually running in our subconscious mind that have us sort of identifying with our woundings, that have us identifying with our traumas, our karmas, our experiences even. And so when we go through an awakening process, really when we go through the third dimensional reality of life, which is several lifetimes, not just one here, for us to master this third dimensional reality of separation. And as we graduate out of that, because it's a graduate soul who is a twin soul who has graduated out of the 3D matrix and has come back into the higher aspects of self and the higher aspects of true union, which is union with God, source, creation, universe, inner self, higher self, all those wonderful things. We are releasing during these processes the attachments to all of the programs, the beliefs, the identifications, the wounds, the karma, the ancestral karma, the traumas, all of these things that not only have we taken on through ancestral bloodlines, but we've taken on through indoctrinations, through school, movies, books, friends, all of these sort of things. We come into this reality in an amnesic state and we learn everything that there is to learn in the 3D, right? And those learned experiences become behaviors, they become identifications, they become the ego self, they become programs. And our whole system basically runs on a default based on what our father believed, our great-great-grandmother believed, the traditions that have been passed down. And I'm not saying that all of this is negative or all of it is bad. All I'm saying is that these things become who we believe we are. They become our identification of self, and we become attached to them, right? We become attached to these ideas, to these concepts, to these beliefs. And most times than not, a lot of these attachments become unhealthy patterns, unhealthy habits, programs, things of that nature. Specifically, when we're talking about romantic partnership, we're talking about, having some sort of romantic union, which in the third dimensional reality is largely distorted because it is based in a lack frequency, and it's based on an idea that we have perpetuated for however long in this dimension, that if we're not in romantic partnership, or if romantic partnership doesn't show up in a certain way that we have been programmed to believe that it needs to show up, et cetera, or if our partner isn't doing X, Y, and Z to make us feel validated or completed, fill in the blank, we could go on and on and on, then somehow this is wrong. This isn't right. This doesn't align to my belief. It doesn't align to what I have been taught, right? It doesn't align to the program that I'm running. It doesn't align to what my friends say, to what my parents say, my family say. It doesn't align to what my ego is saying either, right? So all of these beliefs, they become attachments. We become attached to believing this thing, right? The myriad of things, we become attached to those. So these attachments become patterns, programs, like I say, the things that are just consistently running in that default program in the subconscious mind. And it's what keeps us running basically the same life over and over and over again for a lot of us. wondering why, I'm trying to manifest this other thing, or, why do my relationships keep looking like this? I want to create more abundance in my life, or, I want to have this, this healthy relationship dynamic. Whatever it is, it's the attachments to the way that we think things are supposed to show up that are keeping us stuck on a twin flame path. So that's what we need to talk about in this video today. So it's releasing those attachments that is basically what's happening when we're talking about going through ascension, awakening. We're talking about going through the alchemy process. It's releasing the attachment to, I believe this, I believe that, I believe this definition, this label, this thing, this tradition, this whatever it is. I believe in all of these things. And so therefore I am attached to that belief, to the point that my ego will defend these things that I believe in, that I'm attached to, these programs that I'm running, these inner child wounds that I'm having, all of these things, which generally speaking, until we go through some sort of a healing process, we go through some sort of an awakening process, or something in our world sort of shakes us loose, until those things happen, we are generally running these attachments and these beliefs and these programs without being aware of it, right? So unconsciously, we are running these things. So when we start to come into consciousness, go through an awakening and ascension process, these attachments that we've had all of our life are what come up for question, right? And as these start to come up for question, so for example, we can say like, okay, I'm noticing that the last 3 relationships that I have been largely karmic. They've been largely unhealthy, largely toxic on some level. They don't feel right. They're not playing out the way that I would like a romantic partnership to play out. And yet I've noticed that I'm continuing to attract that same thing in different partnerships over and over and over again. Why is that happening? So when you're in that place of, okay, something's off, I'm having an awareness of this, that's when you're in a place of saying, okay, what am I running unconsciously that I'm not aware of, per unconsciously, and why am I running it, right? This comes down to what's going on with my inner child wounding, what's going on with ancestral karma, with my beliefs and whatever else, and why am I attached to these things, right? So it goes deeper than only saying I have a belief that I need to eradicate. It's also saying, why am I attached to this belief? Why don't I want to let it go, right? Why don't I want to let it go? This is like the root of all of it. Why am I holding on to it? If I know that releasing this karmic pattern is going to make my future, romantic relationships healthier, better, show up in all of these different ways, then why am I holding on to that past pattern still? Because you're identifying with it. Because your ego self is attached to that identification. And so when we're going through a healing process, an awakening process, the twin flame dynamic, we need to understand that these triggers and things that come up for us that make it feel like this is really damn hard to do this, and I just don't know if I can do it. All those things that come up for Divine Feminine on this path that just feel so heavy and so hard and so painful, it's because you're attached to the other aspects and programs and beliefs that you've been running. It's the attachments that you have to release in order to move forward. And the parts of you that have been identifying with those attachments are scared shitless to release them, because then that means if I'm not who I thought I was, then who am I? It's this fear of the unknown, of what's on the other side. So if Lalana is running all of these programs, and I'm aware of these programs now, and these things are coming up, it's like, okay, now I see it and I want to clear it because I want to have a healthier life, a happier life, whatever that might be. But at the same time, that means potentially I'm losing aspects of my personality, aspects of myself. And so then what's left? What is it then? Who am I then? This is why we continue to run the same programs, even when we're aware that they're going on, right? So there's a difference of having that running unconsciously, you're not really whatever, and having like being like, okay, now I'm aware that this stuff's coming up. And a lot of times on the ascension path, this is when people start to kind of panic and freak out and want to sort of shift back into that old life, into those old programs, because it's comfortable, because they are attached to the way that things feel, right? We're attached to those things, even if they're uncomfortable, they're familiar. So if we're in a process where we're coming up and we're saying, I have to release this pattern, this program, this belief, why am I attached to it? It's a hugely important question that we need to ask ourselves repeatedly on the ascension path. Why am I attached to this? Because you've based your identity on it. And releasing that attachment means I am having to release parts of me that I have identified with all my life. This is why ego death is such a massive undertaking when you go through an ascension process. It's why for some people it takes years. There are so many layers that we need to pull back in regard to going through these processes and releasing the identifications and the attachments of who we think we are, based on the fact that we are afraid to let go because we don't know what else is on the other side. Who is Lalana if she's not that, right? Who am I if I'm not that? Well, the ego runs riot with that question. The ego panics at that question. The ego has been identifying itself as you for as long as you've been alive and in a lot of past lives prior, right? And so the ego doesn't want to release that attachment to the identification of itself. The process of awakening is the ego is dying, right? The ego's dying. These aspects of you that you've been attached to are being peeled off. So there are parts, very strong parts of this path that you will feel extremely resistant to look at this stuff, to face this stuff, to release this stuff, to come face to face with the truth that I have been holding on to, this identification of me, right? I've been holding on to these things, right? And now I have to let them go, and I don't know if I want to let them go. And so this is a huge sort of wall that everybody hits, I think, that's on the awakening path, regardless if you're a twin or not. It is a huge wall that you hit that says it's time to shift to the next rung on the ladder, which you guys will hear me say a lot. You have to climb the ladder, right? And you get to the next thing, and you graduate to the next thing, and you graduate to the next thing. It's like passing classes in school, right? I have to pass this class in order to go to the next class. And you go to the next class and you're thinking like, well, I remember the stuff that I learned in that last class, but this is a whole lot of new stuff and I'm kind of anxious about it. Am I going to be able to pass this class? Ascension is like that. Awakening is like that, because you're not sure what you're walking into for the next, phase of it. You have an idea, but you're not quite sure. And when it comes to releasing the attachment of the aspects of you that you have been attached to, it becomes a scary thing, and it becomes sticky, and it becomes that place where I always say, like, your lower chakras get gunked up and like paste and glue and all of these things that are going on, because your vibratory system is all gunked up with programs and beliefs and attachments and all of these things. And so your energetic system isn't running smoothly, which creates anxiety, depression, illnesses, all sorts of things that we won't get into. So the attachment aspect, the attachment component, is very important for us to look at, because it is so strongly played out on the twin flame dynamic in regard to being attached to your twin, in regard to being attached to the physical aspect of your twin, and attached to the physical idea that I have to be in romantic partnership with them in order to validate me, in order to show that this is real, in order to convince my ego that I'm not crazy, in order to convince anybody else that I've been talking to about this that I'm also not crazy, because look, there's my twin flame boyfriend or girlfriend, and so therefore I can prove to you and prove to me that this is real. That's attachment. It's saying I need to validate that what's going on within me has some sort of physical basis, some sort of physical, groundedness, stabilizer, whatever. This is how attachment works. And so it's saying, I don't want to release those attachments that I have to those past programmings because I'm not sure who I am beyond that. And the twin is over there saying, waving this carrot, which is not true, but it's the way that it is sort of touted on this twin flame path, that it's all about physical union, romantic union, best lover, best partner, best blah, 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 all of those sort of things. And so we immediately shift back into that old dynamic, that old belief, that old programming paradigm that we are doing our best on the ascension process to release, right? So this is why I talk about these things all the time, and I'll kind of harp on them, because what is going on the twin flame ascension path is what is breaking you out of those other things that some people are telling you you need to go after that person. That is the literal opposite of non-attachment, and it's the literal opposite of breaking free from the programs that are telling you that you have to be in physical union with that person because you're attached to that, because your past is telling you that you're attached to that, because it's telling you that in order for this to be real, I have to validate it to myself and to everybody else in a physical way. That's attachment. That's attachment in its epitome when it comes to this path. And it's the one thing that we all have to face and deal with in every little aspect and layer that's going on within our makeup, right? Our false self, the false identification of self based on these beliefs and programs and attachments that's going on. You're right. Your twin comes in, initiates your awakening activation to break you free from attachment. I talk about this in another video, but I'm going to do like a whole video on it. And that is, why does the divine masculine come in and you go in and out of separation? Why do they come in and push, see where you're at, and you get the, the back and forth thing going on, right? Why does that happen? Why are you in physical union for a month and then you're apart again for 6 months, however long, a year, 2 years, some people for a lifetime? It depends. Why does that happen? Because the divine masculine's role, among many roles, is to come in and see where the divine feminine is energetically. Are you still attached to this? Are you still running those past programs? Are you still attached to the physical aspect of romantic union? Is that still what you think this is? I'm trying to show you that this is an ascension path. I'm trying to break you out of the programs that have you running this over and over again and looking actually in the wrong direction of what's happening. I'm trying to show you that. And the only way that I can show you that, because you're still operating from these programs and this third dimensional belief system that this is only has to be a physical romantic aspect, then I have to come in physically and interact and push all your buttons and trigger you so that you will detach. I did a video on why the masculine, is detaching. I don't remember the title of it, but it's in the videos if you guys want to watch it. So the masculine is going to come in, and this is guided by their higher self. Are you still attached? Are you still running these attachments? Why do they do that? Because they are here to elicit your awakening, to break you free from the third dimensional reality of programs that have you stuck in a loop that is telling you that you have to do X, Y, and Z in order to be validated, in order to be worthy, in order to be loved. They're breaking you out of that. They're breaking you out of your abandonment wounds, out of your, low self-worth things, all of these things that aren't you. They aren't you. And so the attachment aspect of this is massive, because when we have twin flame coaches that are saying that the end all be all and the only reason that you're doing this is to have some sort of physical romantic union, and if you're not in physical romantic union, then somehow that means that you're failing. They've missed the boat completely. They've missed the boat completely. And I say that with infinite love and gratitude, right? Everyone is operating from where they're at. But when you're actually on a twin flame path and you've been doing this for a long time, you start to realize really quickly that that's not what this is about, right? It's not about that. Can you have that? Sure you can, but not until you come into inner union, not until you start running all of these programs and all of these attachments that are telling you things have to show up in a certain way and look in a certain way, and you have to have these things in order to sort of validate to your ego that this is real and that is real, and I feel like I need to validate these things to other people too, because you're attached to what that old program is. So your masculine's going to come in and they're going to test you to see if you're still attached to that old program. As I said in another video, and eventually I'll make a video on this, twin flames are holding the blueprint for seeding sacred union on new earth, right? They are holding the blueprint for sacred union. They are breaking out of this old third dimensional romantic relationship template that is based on distortion, that it's based on fantasy, it's based on lack, it's based on fear, it's based on low self-worth. It's based on the idea that unless I have someone else in my world romantically, I don't feel complete, right? The twin flame dynamic is breaking that loose from you, breaking it free. That's why you're here, to break out. And then you're seeding sacred union, which is actually the highest aspect of interconnectivity when it comes to having some sort of romantic dynamic, which is based on interdependence and not codependency, right? Which is based in the fifth dimensional aspect and higher. This is why inner union is so important. This is why doing the work is so important. And this is why these attachments that we have to what we think this is supposed to be and how it's supposed to show up based on the attachments that I have from, my early childhood woundings and all of these ancestral things that I brought in, that I'm believing that these things are my identification. Ego death is going to shed those free, is going to shed that attachment free. And so surrendering to that process and knowing that if you are on a true twin flame path and you are truly ascending, that you are being guided by your higher self to release these attachments, because these attachments are keeping you hostage and holding you stuck and keeping you out of inner union and way away from sacred union, right? And that the divine masculine physical self is going to come in and test to see where you're at, then this whole thing becomes a little bit more navigable, right? Then we can see like, oh, this actually does have a process that I need to go through. I can't jump to the front of the line and skip all the stuff in between. I can't take this old energetic, heavy laden system that I've been running that's carbon-based in the 3D and pull it into the twin flame dynamic in the physical and think that it's going to be able to hold. It won't. It can't. It's not possible. Twin flames are a high vibratory one soul system, right? We have descended into the third dimensional aspect of this reality for this experience. And now we're ascending out of it. And in order to ascend out of it, we need to release all the things that are keeping us hostage in it. One of those biggest things is the attachments to all of these things that are telling you that you're all of that stuff, right? That's what's keeping a lot of us stuck. And like I said, even if you're not a twin flame, even if you're just going through an awakening, right? Same thing. I say just. There is no just. This is life altering. You will not be the same person that as you started on awakening path as you were when you get to the end of it. You will not be running these things anymore. That takes some people lifetimes. It takes some people years. It depends on the process and how resistant we are to it. And attachment makes us very resistant to the changes that need to take place in order for you to come back into the high vibratory state that you actually are, and to come back into that inner union. So attachment, really pay attention to those things that you feel like you're gripping onto really tightly and that you just don't want to let go of in regard to your beliefs, in regard to your programs, in regard to those inner child woundings, in regard to the ways that you identify as, in regard to, your personality traits, things that feel like I don't want to release this, but not because it feels healthy to me. That's fine if you don't release things that are healthy for you, but things that are feeling unhealthy to me, right? My traumas, my karmas, my woundings, the things that I'm always sort of running in the background, and I know that I always have because I see these things show up in my external reality in a variance of ways. Why am I attached to those? Right? That's one of the keys. Why am I attached to that? What's going on? So that's what I have for you guys. I hope this helps, and I hope you have an awesome day.